Brad Johnson. It is May the 18th, 2020, and this feels like it's the sort of fulmination of 2 years of talking about this subject. We have discussed the fact that someday indictments may happen based on the deep state attempt to overthrow the government or treason, or I guess it's sometimes it's parsing it pretty finely, but and it looks like that list is now available. The list of people who may be formally charged for all this stuff. If I have that at all right, can you please explain it?
Sure. Let me just say, I do have a list of indictments. We're going to be able to go over it. These are, I would say, unconfirmed. And this was, there's another show, the Chris McDonald show, that's the Mac Files, is what it's called. He was the one that got this list. It is from a longtime friend of his who is in some way associated with the prosecutor's office, who's in helping in some way with this Durham investigation. So now information isn't classified, but it's also unconfirmed and not something that they would be particularly anxious to have out. So it's one of those things that I would say it's very interesting and seems to sound about right, but take it with a grain of salt. I'll put it that way, so you don't know. So, however, Chris, who's also a friend of mine that does the Mac Files show, has quite a little bit of confidence in this. So, we're going to see fairly soon, and it would be interesting if there starts to be cracks around the shroud of secrecy of this what looks like criminal prosecution that's getting ready to take place now. So on the list itself, what is by far the most interesting, kind of from my opinion, is the John Brennan. And it's one of the things that I have long said, that if you look, I've always said he's the spider at the center of the web, and essentially all roads lead to John Brennan. And that's something we've talked about and used many times. Now, to put it more succinctly from my perspective, my take on it is that if you look at secondary analysis, where you're looking at all the connections between everyone and everything, you find nexus points where everything kind of gets led back to one individual. And the main nexus point that I have seen as we go through all of this and as the information comes out is John Brennan. And that's why I say all roads lead back to John Brennan. So John Brennan in this list that we have, that, like I said, it's unconfirmed, but it is very interesting, is that he's going to be faced with 3 counts of conspiracy to overthrow the government, 3 counts of lying to Congress, which, by the way, he was already found, not nothing happened to him, but he was already spying on Congress and senators back when he was director of the CIA, got caught doing it and lied about it to Congress, and then had to come out and apologize for all of that. Nothing really happened to him because he had the protection of the Obama administration, but he's already had that problem precisely. So since he got away with it, it certainly makes sense to me that would be something he would feel basically immune to continue doing. So 3 counts of conspiracy to overthrow the government, 3 counts of lying to Congress, 2 counts of lying to investigators, that would be the FBI or DOJ, 1 count of conspiracy to commit treason, and 3 counts of obstruction of justice. Now, the treason is the 600-pound gorilla in the room. And everyone, I'm sure, will remember something we've talked about for a very long time. The day after the Mueller investigation ended, U.S. Attorney General Barr reinstated the federal death penalty. And I have always said that is no coincidence. That was done on purpose. That U.S. Attorney General Barr is a very deliberate person. And he knew as soon as there was nobody found guilty, there was no actual underlying crime that could be shown to be the case against Trump or his campaign or anyone associated with his administration, he knew that what had happened, therefore, was treasonous. And that was done on purpose to put that death penalty on the table. And I would say that is, and all of these charges that are on this list, that's the one that would definitely carry the death penalty if it goes to trial. And it's something I've often said is, and for ever since this happened with Mueller, with U.S. Attorney General Barr reinstating the death penalty, is that I personally view this as a big positive. Now, it may sound cruel to suggest that the death penalty for someone would be a good thing, but people have to remember that the death penalty is meant to be a deterrent against those crimes taking place in the future, particularly egregious murders, for example. You want the death penalty for those people, like serial killers, to discourage other people from doing it in the future. And that's precisely why I would say that if all of this is true and he actually, goes to trial, which he won't, but if he were to do so, it would be a very healthy thing for the United States of America if he was indeed treasonous and betrayed his country, that he get the death penalty. Because what does it do? It acts as a deterrent for future traitors. And
Also,
that's why.
the recidivism rate for people that get the death penalty is very low.
Yes, that's very true. Yeah, as far as I know, that's zero. But I guess that would need to be proven. So it is one of those things that I think would be healthy. Now, to go on to the other ones, they're interesting too, but there's some differences to it. You'll notice that John Brennan had 3 counts of conspiracy to overthrow the government. Now, a conspiracy to overthrow the government and treason are, even semantically, not being lawyers, we can see that there is a difference. Trying to overthrow the government and committing treason, there is a distinction. And I don't know. It would be interesting to see, once this comes out publicly, what all the legal eagles have to say about it. And if the death penalty would also be on the table as part of the possible punishment for conspiracy to overthrow the government. Now, to me, just a layman on these things, it makes sense that would be essentially treason, and also the death penalty could be applied to that. But again, on the Brennan thing, he has, according to this list, which, as I said, is unconfirmed, he is going to be charged with 1 count of treason. And if that's true, he would have the death penalty on the table. And as I've often said, there's just no way in God's green earth that a guy like former CIA Director John Brennan is going to take the risk of going to a jury trial, and if he loses, getting the death penalty. He's just not going to risk that. That means he's going to have to basically take whatever deal is put on the table and just plead guilty to all this stuff. And I would expect them to reduce it from treason to this conspiracy to overthrow the government, plead guilty on it. And of course, part of that plea deal would be he's got to tell everything he knows. So I think that if this is true, they have him. It's over, and of course, long it's been said that he's lawyered up and prepared. Everybody in town apparently is lawyered up now, so it'll be seen. Now, one additional thing to that, before I go to the rest of the list, is there are 4 other CIA personnel who are going to be indicted, but don't have names or list of charges for that. Very interesting perspective. So that if it's true, it would mean there's a core of 4 senior people at the CIA that did all of this in conjunction with John Brennan, who was director at the time. Very, very, very interesting. And those people, if that's true, it's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out. And it would also, one of the things that lends credibility to this list to me is all those names are withheld. That makes perfect sense to me. So now going on to the list, Loretta Lynch indicted 3 counts of conspiracy to overthrow the government, 2 counts of obstruction of justice, 3 counts of lying to Congress. Sally Yates, 3 counts of conspiracy to overthrow the government, 3 counts of obstruction of justice. James Clapper, 3 counts of conspiracy to overthrow the government, 2 counts of lying to Congress. James Comey, 3 counts of conspiracy to overthrow the government, 6 counts perjury, 4 counts obstruction of justice, 4 counts falsifying government documents. Andrew McCabe, maybe I should be mentioning, well, I think everyone knows these names, so I don't need to go through all of their former positions, but certainly they're easy to search. They're everyday names out there now. But all these guys are DOJ, FBI, CIA personnel from the Obama days, Obama administration. So Andrew McCabe, 3 counts of conspiracy to overthrow the government, 2 counts of perjury, 3 counts of lying to Congress, 1 count of falsifying documents. Bruce Orr, FBI guy, 3 counts of conspiracy, 1 count falsifying documents. Baker, going to be indicted, but uncertain of what charges. Peter Strzok, 3 counts of conspiracy to overthrow the government, 4 counts of perjury, 3 counts of falsifying documents, which, by the way, some of that's probably being added to right now based on the Flynn case, which is, I think, one of the reasons this is being delayed. 3 counts of conspiracy for Lisa Page, Strzok's lover, both at the FBI. 3 counts of conspiracy to overthrow the government, 3 counts of perjury, 1 count obstruction of justice. Rod Rosenstein, 5 various charges that are not listed. Susan Rice, illegal use of government systems. That's interesting charge. It's quite different than the rest. 3 counts of perjury, 1 count of obstruction. So that's the list in its entirety that I have. A couple comments on all of this. One, as I said, take this with a grain of salt, because while it looks realistic to me, and one of the reasons I'm able to talk about it is kind of the sourcing looks reasonable and the information looks reasonable. So there's a chance this is true. But also another thing to take into account, all of these charges could change too. This stuff evolves over time. And some of these things could be, the charges could be, it's a sliding scale of the way the government can charge you in criminal cases. And so they can have stiffer charges, like, for example, comparing treason to conspiracy to overthrow the government. So I'm assuming, don't know, but I'm assuming the penalties and what would have to be proven in all of these are kind of a sliding scale of going up and down. So this stuff could all be shifted around. Even if this is exactly true today, it doesn't mean it's going to be true a month from now. Things could be added or taken off or negotiated through plea deals and those sorts of things. And everybody here is going to plea out. They're going to, if this is true, they're not going to fight this in court. Now, just take, for example, someone like the first one on the list, which is Loretta Lynch. 3 counts of conspiracy to overthrow the government, 2 counts of obstruction of justice, 3 counts of lying to Congress. 3 counts of conspiracy to overthrow the government. That's not a 6-month term in jail. So if she risks doing this, that's a lot of counts. And if they can prove 1 or 2 or 3, if they can convict her on half of it, that's probably virtually life in prison for somebody like that. A 20 or 30-year sentence, and she might live long enough to get out of jail, but her life will be destroyed and reputation and everything. So they're going to try to plead this down, to plead guilty on lesser charges, which is SOP. That's how this stuff works. And these sorts of negotiations go on absolutely every single day with prosecutors and criminals that are indicted. So that's basically the information that's out there. Like I said, it tends to fit. It's interesting, but unconfirmed. Take it with a grain of salt, as I've said repeatedly. Don't take it to the bank, but OMG, wouldn't this be a very interesting turn of events? And certainly the circumstances indicate what we've seen so far, and what I've long predicted is this fits what is the natural result out of it. And I remind everybody of going back and looking at the original FISA request, and when I was able to read the redacted version, and this all fits, because these are the types of crimes that it looks like everybody was committing.
Any idea when these events were actually going to take place? Like we have what looks like a pretty good outline of what the list looks like. When will the actual indictments take place?
No idea. It's just so hard to say. Again, it's just pure speculation. I'm sure there are people who know, but a part of the problem with this is it keeps evolving. And like I said, I personally believe that many of the people on this list, this is out of the Durham investigation for the FISA thing. So we have now the Flynn case, which it looks conceivable that there might be additional indictments that would come out of that. Now, I don't know if this process this judge on this case is doing would delay those indictments, but I would guess, just like I say, from a layman's perspective, I would guess that judge stalling essentially on this for whatever reasons would delay these additional charges being brought to bear. And for example, Peter Strzok was very involved in the General Flynn thing. So if it is what it appears to be, that he was politically targeted and they were trying to destroy a political enemy, that's a lot of laws would have been broken in that, and therefore they would want to add charges to what's already on here for Peter Strzok, which is, I said, 3 counts of conspiracy to overthrow the government, 4 counts of perjury, 3 counts of falsifying documents. Just at a guess, I would say the counts of falsifying documents would go way up. And U.S. Attorney General Barr and U.S. Attorney Durham, I guarantee you, are very cautiously going through all of this stuff, reviewing everything, and so it takes time. I mean, wild guess on my part, I would say probably not within 30 days, hopefully within 60. But I would say the charges will be announced well before elections. There's famously the October surprise time frame. So, maybe October. I don't know. I would hope before that, but we'll see.